Anyways, Carolyn is an equity partner with Assoc. She spent her entire career representing Illinois municipalities. Carolyn is one of the primary editors of the Illinois Municipal Handbook and is the primary attorney for the municipal clerks of Illinois. Carolyn has been named by Illinois super lawyers as one of the top 50 female attorneys in the state of Illinois, as well as named super lawyer. Excuse me, I jumped the line there. Representing cities and villages for every year that the distinction has been awarded. I guess I need bigger glasses.
That's enough. That's enough.
I'm sorry, Carolyn. I guess I ruined you.
They all know me anyway, so it's fine.
I had it memorized.
From the Edgar County Watchdogs, we have Kirk Allen. He's co-founder of the Edgar County Watchdogs, married for 28 years with one son. Having spent a career in the Air Force, he moved back to the family farm and operates a private business specializing in the fire industry and teaches tactical fireground operations at the national level. Currently serves as the fire chief EMT with Kansas City Fire Protection District. In addition, he served 8 years as township supervisor and 2 as township trustee. Co-recipient of the 2016 State Policy Network's Vernon Crable Foundation Unsung Hero Award. John Kraft, co-founder of the Edgar County Watchdogs, married for 29 years with 2 daughters, 1 son, and several grandchildren. He was born in Lincoln, grew up in Olney, spent Olney, out of the White Squirrels.
Yes.
Spent a career in the Army and moved back to Paris, Illinois. Earned his bachelor's degree at EIU and has completed all coursework requirements for the Masters of Public Administration at EIU. Co-recipient of the 2016 State Policy Network's Vernon Crable Foundation Unsung Hero Award.
So you're all probably wondering what you have gotten yourselves into tonight, which is about what I was wondering about 2 years ago when I first met these gentlemen. I was going to a township meeting in rural Illinois, and I received emergency phone calls from my clients saying, the Edgar County Watchdogs are coming to our meeting. And I'm like, oh no, that's terrible, not the Edgar County Watchdogs. I've heard about them, I haven't met them, but I know they're like demonic horned beings. And, you know, I heard these terrible things from them. They're Republicans, they're out to destroy the state, they're out to make people look bad, they're doing this for profit. And then I started thinking, I'm like, wait a minute. Now what I've really heard about them is that they go to meetings to make sure that public bodies follow the law, and they want to have open and transparent government, and I'm like thinking, that's all the stuff that we stand for too. So why am I worried about them coming to this meeting? So we survived the meeting, and I met them in this dark parking lot afterwards, where I interrogated them for 2 hours, and I decided
Two and a half.
they're kind of normal people. And then I came back to my law firm and I said, I met the Edgar County Watchdogs, and all my law partners had the same reaction. Oh no, not those guys. And now you're speaking with them? And so I decided there was a need to educate public officials about what these watchdog groups do, because I have represented municipalities that have bad watchdog groups, and we'll talk a little bit about those tonight. But since they've driven for 4 hours to get here, I'm going to let them talk most of the night. But what we really want to know is, why are you interested in being here? What is it you want to know about them, about what they do, and about what they operate? So why don't you tell them about how Republican you are, and how all the money you make.
Well, boy, that's a tough one to start off with. I got into this basically out of a fluke as an EMT. I got an ambulance call. It was for an 11-day-old baby not breathing. How many parents in here? Okay. That's an emergency call. I'm 4 miles from the ambulance bay. I'm driving 100 miles an hour. We risk little to save little, risk a lot to save a lot. Long story short, the dispatcher that took the call never asked a single question or introduced infant CPR over the phone. Had they done that, they would have known the child was breathing. Because when I got there, the 16-year-old mother had a child in her arms, and the child was screaming bloody murder. If he's screaming, he's breathing. Okay, sigh of relief. My first public meeting I ever went to was our county 911 board meeting, and I asked our board, are the dispatchers certified? In Illinois, dispatchers have to be certified by Department of Public Health. And the answer was, well, who are you and why do you want to know? What kind of answer is that?
Wrong answer.
Okay. I told them who I was. I was the chief of our local department. They didn't even know who I was. And that's fine, I was new. But my question was, are they certified? And after about 15 minutes, they said they're all trained. I didn't ask if they were trained. I asked if they were certified. My first Freedom of Information request was to the Department of Public Health for their certifications to dispatch medical calls. Our dispatchers had not been licensed for 6 years. Our dispatch center, 911 center, was never even licensed to operate. And that's when I went, oh my gosh. I go to the next meeting and I confront them and I thought, if they're lying about that, what else are they lying about? And I could go on for hours of what we uncovered just in our county, from gambling with taxpayer money to beer parties to pizza parties. It was literally a party from the county board all the way through everybody in that office of 911. And most every one of them is gone and been replaced. But from that, we basically, people saw that we fixed that and they said, well, hey, we got a problem over here because we look into it. Well, one thing led to another. Edgar County Watchdogs is a C4 nonprofit. We formed what's called American Watchdogs. We do a national training curriculum to teach people how to do it right. From watchdog accountability, what to look for, and basically how to do it and make things better, not make things worse. And that's basically how I got started. John, you want to cover yours?
So, when I retired out of the military, I moved down to Paris, Illinois, in Edgar County, and I videotaped weddings and things like that on the side because I didn't tired of taking orders, tired of working, forgot to take it easy and videotape things on the side. So the school play was coming up, and I went to the meeting and said, hey, can I videotape your school play and sell copies to the parents? And I'd never been to a public meeting before. I knew the guy sitting next to me had been doing it for that school district for 20 or 30 years. And they promptly told me that they were not going to discuss that at that meeting. I said, okay. I went home, 8 o'clock next morning, the secretary called me up and said, well, we talked about it and gave the same guy that's been doing it and told me to do it. Oh, wait a minute, you just lied to me last night. And then Kirk and I was at a dinner with our new sheriff that got elected. I was sitting across the table and he started talking about 911. I said, well, the school board just lied to me last month. And just kind of looked at each other and said, well, let's do something. So we didn't know what to do. I said, well, let's open up the website. So we opened up the website and got on Microsoft Word, typed out one article, saved it as an HTML, and uploaded it to the website. Then the next article, I manually moved everything down, saved it, put a line across it, saved it, at the top. We did that for about a month. We had 6 or 7 articles, so I was sitting there thinking, this is too hard. So I found WordPress, and we moved everything to WordPress. It got a whole lot easier. And so since we spent, 2 years just working in Edgar County, and all the other counties and municipalities, townships, school boards, calling us, people that didn't feel like they were getting a fair shake with their local public officials call us. And now public officials are calling us. And we would go in and try to figure out, what was going on. Inform the person, that might have a problem. Well, that's the law. They have the right to do that. If they have the right to do that, all you can do is exercise your option at the election. And if they didn't have the right to do that, we would, tell them we don't believe the township has the right to do that. Just went from there. Now, We are giving classes. How many states we've been to?
I think 6 total.
I think New Jersey, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Pennsylvania.
Wyoming via phone and Oregon via phone.
And we were invited to speak at the Capitol building in Connecticut last year. So it's been fun and we enjoyed it.
So if they never want to see you again after tonight, how do they avoid you coming out to the communities?
Well, I don't know that answer, but I do know how everybody can get us to knock on their door before their next meeting. And I believe I said this at the IML conference. Refuse to allow people to talk at your meeting during public comment. Don't answer a FOIA request when you got the documents. There was one other thing.
Those are the 2 biggies.
Try taking action on something that's not on the agenda. It's simple things. People have a right to talk under the rules established by the municipality, provided they're reasonable. I've watched the news in the last couple of days where at least one school district, 2 school districts, have a policy that says you can't mention a public official's name while you're talking in public comment. And you have to mention it. You can't prevent somebody. All the talk about Jim Bob, I'm going to tell Jim Bob I'm talking to you now. But they gavelled the mother down, and what school district is right? Hinsdale School District. They gavelled the mother down. She continued to talk, and one of the board members actually walked up and took the microphone off the stand and walked away with it.
That'll get us there.
Instead of letting her talk, I mean, pardon my French, but if she was making an ass of herself, let her do it on video. But instead of just letting her finish, and I don't think she was saying anything wrong. She was complaining about the treatment her student had, or that her daughter had. Let her finish. It looks bad when you try to walk up and take the microphone away from a mother and talk about a problem that she had with one of the staff members. I mean, people have a right to talk about their public officials and even the employees of public body, provided it pertains to something to do with their line of work. Right? You don't want to go in there and complain about what church they got to or what they did on vacation to Jamaica or whatever, because it doesn't matter. If it matters to the public body and their performance that they do, they certainly have a right to talk about it.
So why are you doing this? Is it to put articles on your website to sell ads to make money?
What was the question? I can't hear you.
Why are they doing this? What's their motivation? Is it to make money selling ads on their website or what?
We don't get paid to do this. John and I are both retired. We don't have ads that pop up. We're not making any money from ads.
Well, we have them on the side, and about every 3 months when we get up to $100 on the Google ads, they send us a check. I wouldn't really call that, payment.
That covers the website cost. How many of you say the Pledge of Allegiance at your meetings? Off the top of your head, real quick, who knows the last 3 words?
Justice for all.
Say it again.
Justice for all.
Justice for all.
Boy, I blew up.
Justice for all. And I just said this the other night at Pecatonica Township meeting. That's an important part of our constitutional republic. And I can't tell you the number of people that have literally been trampled just because they had an issue they wanted to bring to their local government. Before I even went to 911, when I moved back to the farm, I went to help out our local fire department, and I asked one simple question: what kind of budget do we have? And I was told it's none of your business. I mean, but those are the things people run into in different places. And I'm not saying that you folks do that. Obviously, you're here for a reason, and it's a positive reason, but that's what we see out there. the smaller the community, the more fear there is for people to confront a problem because they don't want to be labeled. They don't want the repercussions. They don't want to have anybody pressure them or talking about them or hitting social media with stuff. We do most of what we do on behalf of people that have asked for help. And we go in and we try to solve the problem, identify if there really is a problem, and sometimes there's not. You know, sometimes their perception of the way things should be is not the way the law is. And it's an educational process. And people will make good decisions once they have the right information. The challenge is getting the right information. And that, I'm sure you've dealt with it. It's a challenge. Even when you give them the right information, we're fighting a tradition of, well, we've done it this way for however many years.
So what if actually, what happens to some of my clients sometimes is they're trying to do the right thing, but they made a mistake. And you come to town and you FOIA something and they realize they made a mistake. What should they do?
Fix it. I mean, that's the biggest thing is just, if it's getting fixed, it's no problem. But we all make mistakes. The crime's never as bad as the cover-up. You can't imagine the level some people will go to cover up some silly thing they did. When in reality, if they would just fix it, it wouldn't be an article. It's how they deal with the problem that becomes the problem, more often than not.
Can I give 2 examples?
You bet.
Here's an example of one person that fixed the problem. In our own county, somebody told us, look at your county engineer's credit cards. So I FOIA'd all the credit cards. He calls and says,
In 24 hours, he called.
I canceled every credit card we own and I'm never going to issue another one. What's on there? He said, if you want to know what's on there, I'll be glad to send it to you. But just know I canceled every credit card and I'm never getting another one for this for the road department. And he never has. And it's been 6 years.
6 or 7.
And I said, no, just show me that you canceled and I'll wait and ask for the invoices. This was when we were first starting.
He fixed the problem.
He fixed the problem, and that's perfectly okay. And there's another one that went completely way out of hand, is in Macoupin County. I requested meeting minutes, the audio recording of the meeting, some credit card statements, some meeting agendas, and a few other things. And they wouldn't provide those. And 2 years later, when they fired the attorney that was working with them, fighting the FOIAs, who told them in closed session, they'll get those records over my dead body. After 2 years and $90,000 paid to our attorney, we got all those records, and guess what we found? Absolutely nothing worth writing about.
One video.
They said they didn't have one of the videos, but they produced it. But that really wasn't even worth writing about. They just gave us the videos, the meeting minutes, and agendas, and credit card statements. They didn't even purchase anything on credit card that was worth writing about. Typically, we look for people that, like the water district, we saw it, went out of state on Super Bowl weekend, threw a big old drunken party with a bunch of catered-in food, just for the trustees and their family. But we didn't find any of that. They ended up 2 years and $90,000.
So how do you get alerted of problems in communities?
Well, our website has a phone number to call, leave a message. Everybody that has an email, they can send us an email.
They get stuff in the mailbox all the time.
Where do these complaints usually come from?
Within your own local government. You got a lot of good people there that see something going wrong, but they know if they say one word, they're in trouble. They're going to lose their job, or there's going to be repercussions. So they reach out to us, and we dive into it. And 99% of the time, the information's accurate. There's a lot of good people that want to do the right thing, but there's, as you folks know, I mean, we're in Illinois. You don't have to look far to see some of the challenges what you're dealing with in Harvey. I mean, there's some communities out there that literally it's a crime spree. You know, back to Edgar County, Any law enforcement in here? Filed off serial number on a gun. Is that a problem? It's a federal crime.
Yep.
Okay? We had a sheriff that arrested, we'll say you, because you had a gun with filed off serial number. You're going to prison. Now this gun's in evidence. Buy. Gosh, we've had this for a couple years. Hey deputy, you want to buy this? Sells that same gun to his deputy. Never mind that the deputies are not allowed to participate in a county sheriff's sale, but they just sold a gun that is unlawful. Never mind the fact he's not allowed to sell seized weapons anyway. That's the type of stuff that we've uncovered. And when you confront him, one of our county board members was a former sheriff. He had sold like 60 weapons illegally. And I'm not an anti-gunner. I hunt, I shoot, I reload, I do it all. But seized weapons, there's a process of how they're to be dealt with. The court orders had all said they're to be destroyed in this case. And when we uncovered it, we had receipts, deposit slips, who they went to. I mean, they kept great records.
It even said serial number filed off.
Yeah, it did. It said serial number filed up. And I asked the former sheriff, who is a county board member still to this day, you participated in this. What's past the statute of limitations? That was his only concern. Never mind, imagine one of those guns is used in a crime and one of your family members is killed. Guess what? The county's in deep trouble because the court order said it was to be destroyed. Who's going to buy liability when that comes back to haunt them? We have found that specific problem statewide, county after county after county. And it's just a matter of someone internally said, hey, I don't think we can do this. But they were afraid to speak up, so we just started asking for the records.
So when you get a tip, what is your process? Because sometimes we have crazy people that come to meetings. Meeting after meeting after meeting.
Sometimes?
And, I mean, how do you, sometimes you might have someone contacting you there just because they want to cause political trouble in the municipality. So how do you weed through to figure out what is a legitimate complaint versus someone who's just trying to use you as a tool to cause a problem?
I asked how many have kids. How many have more than one? How do you identify which one took the cookies out of the cookie jar? You learn real quick how to analyze what you're being told, don't you? That's pretty much the same in this business. We've learned to be able to dissect what we're being told pretty fast. And John can tell you, we've had some crazies that are on a political mission, and we dissect that pretty quick and defuse it, and we don't participate in that.
Yeah, if we can figure out that it's going to turn political, we just don't do it. We don't check to see what political party the public officials are. And if we get a tip that says that them damn Democrats or them damn Republicans, we probably won't even answer the tip. Because we know it's outright political.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us a few things about what's new as far as electronic things? 10 years ago, people didn't have pictures and cell phone pictures, so they council meetings, electronic board meetings, but now everybody does it. And everybody, not everybody, but several people will send text off to the legal, illegal? Is it foreign-able?
Well, for those that didn't hear the question, if they send a text message to their family member during the meeting, is that foiable?
Yes.
The question is it a public record? And what you just described is not a public record. Now, if you're doing public business on that private device, that's subject to FOIA. And that's a great question because we'll see that very thing happening. I mean, meetings at 7 o'clock, oh gosh, did you pick up Bob from the basketball game and Julie from the volleyball game? And somebody's going, the crazy ones, they're texting in the meeting. I want to know what they said. Well, don't jump to conclusions because they probably just want to make sure their kids are getting home okay. Now, you're meeting tonight. Good watchdog, bad watchdog. They FOIA your expenses and you all had a dinner. What? Who's the farthest away from this community?
Who drove the farthest?
Who drove the farthest?
It was probably YouTube.
YouTube?
How far?
Yeah.
Freeport.
Okay, Freeport. They're going to look on that bill and say, well, they went to a Fork and, what is it, Tap, Fork and Tap?
Yeah.
They went to a bar. What were they doing there?
Oregon, Illinois.
And they get on social media and they make a big hoopla out of this bill instead of just saying, hey Bob, what was this for? And get to the bottom of it instead of making a big to-do about it. And there's folks we appreciate, they want to get involved and they want accountability, but they've got to not draw conclusions before they look at the evidence.
And on another note, if they call up and say, hey Bob, what were you doing? If you say, none of your business. Then you can probably expect those people to show up at your meeting and complain about whatever you ate and drank out of town.
Usually at a public meeting, in the first 2 to 3 minutes, I've learned to know whether I'm coming back or not. When you walk in, when all eyes go on you and it's, you know, they're talking about, who's this, why are they here? Or they'll even come out and say, well, who are you and what do you want? Why are you here? I'm just here for the meeting, but why? And it's like, why are you so nervous with somebody coming to the meeting? And it never fails. Usually there's a reason they don't want people at their meetings.
So for us, a majority of a quorum on 5 people board would be 3 people. And it's possible one council member may email 2 other council members and say, what do you think about putting a parking lot on this side of town? Now, that now is rendering a decision that affects the municipality with a majority of the quorum. Is that even legal?
Well, the attorney could answer that, but I'll answer it. If I say something wrong, let me
They
know.
give the male perspective and I give the correct perspective.
As long as it's one way, there's no problem. If one of those recipients hits reply all and starts talking about the project,
Now you have a discussion.
Right.
or if they just reply to the individual person, then that's not necessarily constituting a meeting.
So the Open Meetings Act was amended a while ago because 5-member bodies were having a problem. They could never have 2 people talk to each other without it being a majority of the quorum.
Right.
So when the Open Meetings Act was amended, the compromise there was that there have to be 3 affirmative votes to pass any measure now with a 5-member body. So if you have a 5-member body and only 3 people at a meeting and a vote is 2-1, it doesn't pass because there weren't 3 affirmative votes. But that's why it's okay now to have those communications. And as far as the question about electronic devices, so the rule is not really the device, whether it's a public or private one, it's the content, if it's about public business. And the only thing you have to watch out for, that's a little bit different there, is in Champaign, the city of Champaign, they were having a city council meeting, and council members were texting each other from the dais, while a member of the press was in the front row. And the member of the press said, well, we want to FOIA those records. And they said, well, no, we're not going to let you have those. And that case went all the way up to the appellate court. And they said, if you are texting during a public meeting, there's a presumption that it is about public business and that it can be disclosable. Now, the laws haven't really kept up with technology because how many of you just delete text messages all the time, right? I mean, and if that's from a constituent, you just maybe destroy the public record. So we have to kind of be careful about those, and we have to see how that law will develop.
And that's a great point she brought up. Any school teachers? I got a phone call, actually it was a face-to-face this past weekend with a school teacher. They've implemented a policy on emails for students and communications and whatnot. And they says, I get 100 emails a day. I spend more time deleting emails than I do answering them. I'm like, deleting them? You can't delete them. It's a public record. And they're like, oh my gosh. Well, they took it back to the school and talked with their union reps. And they're like, wait a minute, what are we going to do? We're all deleting emails. Well, that's a case of, hey, they honestly didn't know. They weren't trying to be deceptive. It was just a straight up oversight that nobody ever even thought about. But here we've got all these communications that may or may not impact the child's future. You know, from an accountability standpoint, what did the child tell the teacher? Or didn't tell, or vice versa? Yes, sir.
But you can print those out, put them in storage, and then
You bet. You bet. And on the point of deleting records, how many have filed for a request to destroy records through the local records commission?
All right.
Oh, the clerks raise their hand.
I know Julie's done it.
You wouldn't believe how many times we hear people tell us, well, it's been 7 years, we can get rid of them after 7 years. And they default to IRS rules, and they think that's just the norm, and most of them didn't even realize that the local record commission is the one that controls what you can and can't get rid of. And with that is an interesting story out of College of DuPage. How many caught wind of that scandal back in 15 and 16? DuPage County. Typically, if we're FOIAing records from you, we've probably already got the original or a copy of the original. Okay? Our work is to validate whether or not what we received from somewhere else is truly a public record. Because somebody could have, basically given us a document to send us on a fishing mission. I requested from the Secretary of State the record destruction certificates for the College of DuPage. And it was everything they had asked to get rid of. Then I asked for the college for everything they requested of the state to get rid of. Now logic would say they should match, right? The college removed one document. I think it was page 16 if my memory serves me right. And that one document, they had asked for permission to destroy all emails older than 12 months.
On a
Rotating continuing. Well, we were in the middle of uncovering, the feds got involved and everything, and it was quite a scandal. People went to prison over it. Well, we found out that when we started to dive in, they got permission to destroy emails that we were trying to get. And when they gave us their certificates, it didn't say anything about emails, so nothing should have been destroyed. But what I got from the state proved they pulled one page out and tried to keep it secret. That became part of an obstruction of justice issue that is still in the courts right now. So FOIAing from two different agencies is priceless. Intergovernmental agreements, we've got one with this body, one with this body. We get it from one and the other one says, we don't have any agreements with anybody. Something doesn't add up here.
So sometimes, and this will surprise everybody, there are gray areas of law. Now, what happens if a governmental body has a legitimate dispute with you guys about one of the documents? What's the best way to handle that?
Talk to us. The quickest, easiest way, talk to us. If there's a dispute, we don't think, you don't think we should get a public record, we think we should. Talk to us, and typically we'll let the Attorney General hire it out. And that doesn't cost either party money. To let the Attorney General iron it out, and they take 6 months to 4 or 5 years to iron it out. If it's a gray area and we really want the records, then we do. We submit the request for review to the Attorney General, or we discuss things. Hey, if you wanted to redact somebody's name, go ahead and just give us the rest of it. And it's that simple. But in cases where they just say, we're not giving you anything, don't even submit another FOIA request, well, I guess we'll go to court. But we don't like going to court. We prefer not going to court. And the court never makes us any money, it makes our attorney money. We use a law firm in Chicago, Lovey, and we concentrate on freedom of information, civil rights, and open meetings, among other things. And, they're going to win.
Now, you brought up a great question. In Shelbyville, we're dealing with a case right now in the county. County boards, all county governments represented by your state's attorney. That's the legal counsel, okay? The county board, I'm looking through records and I find minutes where they hired a private attorney. Well, they can't do that. The taxpayers are already paying for a state's attorney to do the job. And by statute, they're required to do that job. And there's guidelines on how they can conflict out and there can be a different attorney appointed. But long story short, we go to the meeting and say, hey guys, you can't hire a private attorney. Here's the statute on it. Could you fix this? No. We can too. Our state's attorney said we could. The two questions I love to ask is, says who with what proof? And it looks like the state's attorney probably did say they could. That doesn't mean it's right. So when we ask for an opinion, if you ask for a legal opinion, I would encourage you to get it in writing, because that way there's no confusion. Somebody tells me something, I'm typing up an email back to them, a memo of record. Hey, I want to make sure that I understood you correctly, and I type out what was described. Now in Shelbyville, what's interesting is as this case progresses, and there's a lot of fingers to this, and it all makes sense now. We talked about some of this at dinner. They hired a person to handle labor relations because the state's attorney didn't want to get involved in that. She's not, in her eyes, qualified, which that may be. I provided 69 pages of legal analysis from the Attorney General. It was a simple FOIA. All records related to state's attorney's obligation to legal counsel for county government and any authority for county boards to hire their own attorney. Now, we had already done our research, and we knew we were on point. So I give them the 69 pages. Now, the lawyer that they had hired said we were dead wrong, we're not lawyers, and we're not. And that 1943 Ashton v. Cook case they're citing, that's from 1943, that's outdated. As early as 2017, that was the case law cited, to this day has never been ruled otherwise. So in 69 pages, we give it all to them and say, hey, it's not me, guys. Read this for yourself. 22 board members. Out of 22, we now have 7 that said, wait a minute. This is pretty cut and dry. Why are we doing this? And the old guard, we've always done it this way. We've always had this person. We're not going to allow them watchdogs to come in here and dictate to us. And fortunately, the state's attorney says, I don't think they're dictating anything, but I can't find anything that lets you do what you're doing. Well, you told us we could. Well, she may have. Fix the problem. It's when they don't fix the problem that you open up a bigger problem. Because all of that money that is going to that private counsel, and I'm sure that Carrie Lynn can point out some cases of false claims and billing that's recoverable. When you don't have the authority to spend that money, it's recoverable. And there's lawyers that want to take those cases to recover every penny that was spent that should have never been spent. So when we have that conflict, my source is to go to other lawyers, go to the AG and get all of their homework and say, here's what we found in our research. Tell me where we're wrong, or tell me where that's wrong. And if they can't, and it's not about us being right, it's about fixing the problem. If the problem's laid out and it's spelled out and it's, what you were doing is wrong, hey, just take steps to fix it, that's all.
And there's one more point that we know they were wrong is last week and the week before, a state representative introduced a bill which would permit county board chairman and county board members to hire a private attorney. I doubt that goes anywhere, but because it's the state's attorney's statutory duty, they're taking away state's attorney's duty, and the public's already paying the state's attorney to do the job. But that bill was introduced after we started digging into it.
We call that break the law, change the law. And we have dozens of examples where we've exposed, in some cases, criminal activity, and instead of fixing it or holding them accountable, they lobby their legislature and they go down to Springfield and they get a law passed to make their very actions legal. Yes, sir?
Who pays your attorney?
Our FOIA cases, under FOIA, if we are the prevailing party, then the defendants have to pay. So they take the case based on that. We don't have any out-of-pocket expense with that. And most attorneys will take FOIA cases because of that provision of fee recovery.
And there's been a couple where our attorneys have said, no, you guys are wrong, we're not going to take that one. Okay. For the majority, 95% of the ones we give to the attorney, they look at it and say, yep, you're right, they should have gave it to you. And then they file a lawsuit on our behalf.
And that's a great question. We did have one early on, an Open Meetings Act case. John's got the honor of, I think, the only person who's ever arrested an entire board, did a citizen's arrest. over an Open Meetings Act issue.
I'll never do that again, I don't recommend it.
But what's interesting, I mean, it was validated, I mean, everybody, it's been written about, blah, 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 but in that particular case, the action they took was a violation of the OMA. So the next morning I filed a lawsuit against, or actually that was one that you filed.
Yeah.
Filed a lawsuit against them pro se, and this is where tight-knit, small community connections has a real negative impact. We had friends on the board. Not all of them, but we had friends that were there. In closed session, they were told by their attorney, don't sweat this. The judge is a former law partner of mine. Okay. We go to court on a simple Open Meetings Act case, and it was cut and dry. And they ruled against us. And
On everything.
On everything. And the judge, they wanted sanctions, and the judge says, no, I'm not going to give him sanctions, but, you know, we're going to rule against him. And we walked out there going, this is crazy. And we've done our cases pro se up to this point. Well, we hired an attorney who took the case. It went to the appellate court. And if you could hear the judge's comment, when that attorney got up to represent that public body, she said, Your Honors, I really don't have a whole lot to say. And the judge says, yeah, kind of like your agenda. And we won that case 3-0. 2 weeks after the ruling, the judge resigned from office, and all of the bad actors in that public body got voted out. So even when initially they say, oh, you're wrong, the judge said so, we found it takes getting things out of your local little district to really get to some really justice issues on these type of things. And that's the worst case scenario we've run into. But that particular case, we had about $9,000 out of pocket. When it got overturned and put back in the courts, that fast they wanted to sell it. They settled it, fixed the problem, and paid the attorney fees.
So what's the worst situation you've seen regarding public comment at a public meeting?
Well, I don't want to mention any names in Ogle, or, well, it's not Ogle County. A county that bordering Ogle County, but arresting people, no matter if you like their public comment or not. If I want to just sit up there and blabber on, or have a 3-minute moment of silence, I should have the right. Arresting people for trying to speak at their meeting. The Attorney General has already told them 2 times that your 15-minute before a meeting sign-up policy violates the Open Meetings Act because it restricts the public's right to speak instead of enhancing the public's right to speak. So after their first determination against them, what did they do? They changed their public comment policy. Instead of being able to email 15 minutes in advance, you have to sign up in person 15 minutes in advance. And then they still arrested the poor lady for showing up to a meeting and signing up 13 minutes.
What did they arrest her for?
They said it was because she insisted on speaking when she signed up 13 minutes in advance, but they actually charged her with criminal trespass to public property. The state attorney tossed it out. He tossed the previous 2 out. So they had 3 arrests in 2 years in that township over the 15-minute sign-up rule, and it's ridiculous.
That's probably the worst.
And then they banned her for 3 months, and then when she showed up to a meeting, they had her arrested, and then they banned her for 6 months and 10 days, which is past the time for the annual meeting of the electors, and she's an elector, which implicates her right to vote and exercise her voting rights. So it turned into a civil rights voting issue, all because they didn't appreciate what she was telling the board, well, 3 members of the 5-member board, so they were going to go out of their way to keep her from talking.
That's so surprising because most members of the public, when they come to your meetings, they're there to tell you you're doing a great job and you're underpaid, right? How about, what's the worst Freedom of Information Act matter that you?
That would have been Kankakee Airport Authority. I asked for invoices for the roofing bids, or for the roofing, they got done on their airport. And one of the commissioners of the roofing company,
Got the contract.
he got the contract, which was never put out for bid. Actually, it was. And he underbid it by a few dollars, and he got the contract. And their attorney said, I'm not gonna give you anything. So I replied, I wish you'd give me the documents, or I'm gonna have to see you in the circuit court when I have to sue you for the document. His reply was, I'm an old hockey player, drop the puck. So I did, and I emailed the state's attorney. The state's attorney sent him a nasty email, and the commissioner quit. The commissioner that quit convinced the attorney to quit at the same meeting. But you know, simple things like that. And there's Algonquin Township. They tried to get a YouTube video of mine taken down. That was the public body doing things. I asked for the communication between Algonquin Township and YouTube. They said there was none. I had another guy on the other side of the state ask for the same thing. They sent him all the communications. Why would you not think I'm going to sue you if you do stupid things like that? Now, if they wouldn't have given the other guy the documents, I probably wouldn't have known, except I read the attorney's invoice, and it said, letter to YouTube, response from YouTube, responding to YouTube's letter. So it was all on his invoice. I knew what was going on. They never removed the video. They tried.
I think probably the most comical was a small community outside of East St. Louis, and on the door, how to get us to show up or how to get us to submit a FOIA, here's a great way. A person sent us a picture of a sign they put up on the door. We are no longer accepting FOIAs until further notice. Sin. And that was the mayor that called you, wasn't it?
He sent me a letter in the mail 10 days late that said, if you want anything, here's our address, drive over here and get it. The afternoon I opened the letter, he called me. Said, don't bother driving over here because I'm still not getting anything. And that's when we sued them and they provided the records, and it cost them about $2,500.
Back to the question of why do we do this? For what it's worth, nobody in their right mind would do what we do. But I truly have been, I mean, this is a calling, and I can't explain it. But that incident in Royal Lakes turned into something much bigger. How many vets in here? Thank you for your service.
You as well.
You bet. While we think that was just a FOIA case, and we ended up having to sue them, and they settled for $500 and paid the attorney fee, and we got the records. But here's what happened out of that. Someone stood up to that city council by the name of Edgar County Watchdogs, and we got a tip from a person. Can you help us? I bought land here in Royal Lakes. My husband is a two-war veteran, Vietnam and Korean War, 100% disabled. And we have to use a porta potty because they refuse to hook up our water and sewer, even though we've paid them. So we drive to Royal Lakes. This is all over a FOIA, how this started. They've been fighting city council for 2 years and could not get water and sewer. When we pulled up, they literally are capturing rainwater to wash dishes and clothes. They have an outhouse, a porta potty next to their house that they have to use because they were not getting connected. We had all the documents, we had everything in order. There's no reason they shouldn't have been connected. We go to the first public meeting. Went to a second public meeting. Within 30 days of the second public meeting, they are now hooked up. Because we presented the law, the facts. In the second meeting, we had more people that attended that meeting than they've ever had. They had a city council that was out of control and nobody knew how to rein them in. Outsiders, it's easy for us to come in and say, hey, you're not going to do this to people. It's wrong. You can't do it. And once they knew they had some outside support, things changed for the better. All over one picture that got sent to us. we now have a family that's got sewer and water. And it's so bad, on that second meeting, or it was the first meeting, they literally were gonna pass an ordinance to ban porta potties unless it's a construction site. That's the level, and they did it in the meeting and it wasn't even on the agenda, but that's the level of angst that was amongst this group of people against this family, who is nothing more than a retired elderly couple that just wanted to be left alone in
What
rural.
was their reason for not hooking them up if they had paid?
They didn't want, the mayor wanted that property before he bought it from the estate of the people that died. They even passed an ordinance saying you can't live in a place that didn't have running water. Well, that's common sense. But the reason they didn't have running water is because the city wouldn't hook them up. Right. So he went and got a battery operated pump, put water in a 55-gallon drum with a switch, and he flipped the switch, turned on the spout on the sink, and the water's running.
He had running water.
So he went by that rule, he technically had running water, and then they were going to do the thing with porta potty.
And this kind of stuff happens because we no longer have local media. The local, small community papers are for the most part gone. They don't have the resources to report on this stuff. The local people don't have anybody to turn to. And in most cases, the papers, it's all about advertising. They're not going to upset their apple cart if so-and-so sits on the board because that's an advertiser. So they reach out to people like us to step in and basically fight the fight for them. And that's probably the worst but best FOIA case we've ever had because it literally solved a 2-year battle for a disabled vet walking outside to go to the bathroom for 2 years. He hasn't yet.
That was my question.
He's
Is he still there? He's still in office?
It's a family operation. Election's coming up, but there's now people that are getting, they filed their papers, they plan on being on the ballot, where before it was just the same cycle. And it was a few years before, the whole board was involved in a huge criminal scandal. I think it was the clerk.
They can't get any state or federal grants anymore because the previous administrations literally stole the money.
The clerk had filed or gotten a hold of the last audit, said, okay, there it is, and copied everything from the previous audit and turned in the duplicate audit 3 years in a row, claiming it was a current audit under the signature of the CPA. Just transposed the documents, and they indicted her, but she still hasn't been prosecuted. That was this little community. See, I mean, just let your mind go wild, and it was happening there.
Any other questions? We're not against public officials, we're not against elected officials, we're not against employees of government, we're not against government in general at all.
Just want it done right.
Yeah. Any guys? You can stay here all night if you want.
Got a meeting.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Gary Lynn Kraft Pepper, Kirk Allen, and John Kraft.
Thank you.
Got any questions, holler? Thank you. You bet.
Yes,